Hello and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be making some bioluminescent mushrooms. Let's get started. Now what we're going to be doing is starting off with getting our camera set up, and then we're going to block out our basic shot, and then we're going to get into some details. So I'm going to jump into my camera by hitting 0 on the number pad key, and then I'm going to select my camera. And I'm going to come down here to the camera tab, and I'm going to go to Viewport Display and Passport 2. Again, this is just a preference thing. I like having the edges of my frame blacked out. Makes it easier for me to focus. This doesn't do anything for your render. This is just for you to focus on what's important. I'm going to open up my View tab on the side here and click Lock Camera to View. And I'm going to kind of come down here, try and get a good angle. I'm going to want to use a really long lens because I want to have like a lot of depth of field. Like this is I've got my camera and I'm in the woods and I'm zoomed in, you know, and so I want to make sure I've got something that's set probably to like, I don't know, we'll try an 85 maybe to start with. And we'll try and model and create the scene to the lens, to the camera. So we can try and make it look as good as we can with what we've got. Now I'm going to take this cube and I'm going to delete it. There, it's gone. I'm going to go Shift A. And I'm going to create a cylinder. I'm going to rotate it. Actually, one really important thing. I want to move my camera around a bit so that the X and Y directions kind of line up with the angle of my camera. So this just makes it a lot easier for me to position things and rotate and kind of shape the scene to the camera. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit R to rotate and Y to lock it on the Y axis, and I'll hit 90, type in 90 on my keypad, just to rotate it around. And I'm going to hit G to grab and X to lock it on the X, and I'll just bring it right over here. And then I'm going to go into edit mode by hitting Tab, and I'm going to select this in cap right here. I'm just going to delete that. I'm going to hit X and delete face because I don't really need it. And I'll hit Alt. Holding down the Alt, I'll click this loop. That'll select that edge loop. Now I'm going to hit E to extrude and grab with G and X to lock it. And I'll just bring this over here. Or in fact, probably the easiest thing to do is let's not do that. Let's just grab this, bring it around, and then I'm going to hit Control R and then roll my mouse wheel. This makes a bunch of loop cuts. All right. Now I'm just going to take some of these and begin with Alt to select the whole ring. And I'm just going to offset them a little bit. In different ways, like I'm grabbing this one on the Y, maybe down a little bit. This one go up, this one go down, this one go up, go Y, bring it out like that. All right, I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to rotate it on the Z a little bit like that. And I think I'll rotate it on the Y some too, just like that, and grab it up. That's pretty good. This is going to be like a log that my mushrooms are going to be growing on. I'm thinking they're going to grow kind of right around this spot right here. Now I'm going to leave my camera. So I'm going to untake camera to view. I'm going to pop out. I'm going to go back into edit mode on this thing. And I'm going to alt click to select that edge loop there. Then I'm going to come up here to the proportional editing tool. And I'm going to click it to turn it on. And then I'm going to hit S to scale. And you see this circle. I'm going to roll my mouse wheel to expand it. And this will just allow me to kind of shrink things down. You can see it's proportional. So the further away it gets from the center of that circle, the less it's going to affect things. So I'm just going to scale it down just so there's a little bit of a slope, a little bit of, fall off, a tapering to that shape. Now I'm going to right click and shade smooth to tell Blender to render this geometry smooth because, trees don't have that's kind of a surface. So I'm going to rename this cylinder. I'm going to double click that and I'm going to call this tree. Why not? I'm going to click on my main collection. I'm going to click plus to add a new collection. And I'll call this one bark. And then I'm going to create some stuff. I'm going to hide this tree just so it's out of my view for a second here. And I'm going to look at this from the top down view by hitting 7 on my num keypad. And I'm going to hit Shift A. I'm going to create a cube. Scale it down. Scale it on the X. And I'm going to scale it on the Z like that. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go Subdivision Surface. I'm going to turn it up to like maybe 4. Then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to select Displacement. Click New. Come to the Texture tab. Select Clouds. And then I'm going to take the size of this thing and just play with it a little bit. Right-click, Shade Smooth. See how it kind of looks like a piece of bark? Sort of, close enough, right? Then what we can do is come here. Let's create a new material for this thing. I'm just going to have a look at it in rendered view. And I'll split my view. I'm going to go up here, create my shader editor, grab my shader editor, sorry. Bring this up here. I'm going to give it a kind of a brown color like that. It's going to be pretty rough, so I'll just turn the roughness right up. I'm going to get a Musgrave texture. And I'm going to get, see, I'll keep it at that. I'll go to multifractal. I'm going to get a map range node and I'll plug it in. Now, the reason why I'm doing this, I'll show you. I'm going to just plug this into the emission so we can see it. I can take this and I can increase it. So from max, the higher this goes, basically, if you think about what the map range node's doing, you've got values coming out of this Musgrave texture that are 0 to 1. But they go beyond that, right? They go up to like, I don't know how high they go, but they're sort of infinite in either direction, I think, because it's a mathematical calculation that creates this noise pattern. And so you've got these numbers that are really big. Anything that's over 1, it's going to blow out to white, right? Because remember, white is 1 and 0 is black. Anything that goes below 0 is going to disappear. It's going to go below black. So when I'm looking at it without this map range node, if I mute it, it kind of cuts off a little bit. You can really notice this if I get a color ramp and I drop it here and then I try and drag these together. You can see I can't really get much more than that. I lose everything that's in here in this space. Whereas if I use a map range node, I can bring all that information kind of back into the bounds of 0 and 1. So by saying actually take everything that's from 0 to 3 and turn it into 0 to 1, it's going to sort of, without losing information, it's going to shrink all those values down so they're a bit more visible. Well, that makes sense. Then I'm going to grab a color ramp and I'll drop it after the map range node. And now I can play around a little bit with some contrast. You can see the higher I go at this, the more it's going to kind of shift that black point and white point. Now, see, I might take the scale, I'll take it up. Go up on the dimension. I'll bring the dimension down and the detail up, and I'll bring the scale down. That's pretty good. And then I probably want to stretch it a little bit. So I think what I'll do is I'll go over here and I'll grab a mapping node and a texture coordinate node. And I'm going to take the generated, that's fine. Generated is the standard, the one that it's using by default already. But you have to plug something in to get the map range node, the mapping node, sorry. You have to plug something in to get the mapping node to work. And I want to scale along the X maybe. Let's try that. Yeah, kind of stretching it out is what I wanted to do. That works. Now I'm not going to be plugging this into the emission. I'm just doing that so I can see it clearly. All right, I'm going to come here and grab a bump node. And then I'm going to take the color, put it into the height, and then we're going to take the normal and plug it into the normal, and we're going to unplug the emission. Now, if you're not familiar with bump nodes, I've got a lot of tutorials about normals and what they are, but the basic gist of it is a normal is the direction that a polygon is facing. And when you use a bump node, you're basically simulating there's more geometry than really exists by using a texture. So it uses that texture to say, okay, well, there's all these directions that the faces are pointing, and so that's how it knows how to calculate how to render the light. It's a really cool topic. It's worth understanding. I'm going to turn the distance down to 0.1. And that will just kind of change this overall scale of the bump noise, which makes it look a little bit better on a small object. Might go 0.01. No, that's too far. 0.05 looks pretty good. Strength's fine. I also might put a little bit of color variation using this system here. So I will create another color ramp, and I will drop it here and take this color ramp, stick it into this one, and I'll plug it into, actually before I plug it in, I go to this white color and I'll color pick the brown and I'll plug this in. This will just give us a differentiate. It'll kind of differentiate between these two colors. I can drag these in as well to get a little bit of variation. I might take this one off black, bring it up a little bit and give it, another kind of maybe a less saturated brown maybe. I think that looks good. I think this will work. This is our piece of bark. We could use this displacement texture. We could set the coordinates to global, and that's going to change how it behaves as it moves through the scene. I will need to change let's try this. Let's actually try doing it like this. I'm gonna go to my texture tab and I need to change the size to get it to work again like we had it. Find a size that works. I think that's pretty good. Take this one, I'll put it just back here, 0, 0, 0. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on tree. To back into my camera, I'm going to select the tree. Come up here, switch this over to geometry nodes. Click new to create a new geometry node system. We'll call this Bark. And I'm going to go for a point distribute node. I'll drop that here. You can see we get all these points now distributing across the surface of the geometry that we're piping in from our group input. But I don't want to lose my tree. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab a join geometry node. And I'll plug this one into here. And this one into here. And this one back in. If you're not familiar, what's happening here is that we're taking that tree geometry, it comes into the system, comes down here and becomes something totally different with the point distribute node. So the geometry disappears. But the tree itself also gets piped to here. So it stays the same, and this one gets joined back up with it. So that's how we're able to marry those two together. All right, so I'm going to start with a low value because I don't want this to like go completely nuts. Sometimes it's a bit crazy. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to go for a point instance node. I'll drop it here. We're going to start with just object because I think with the procedural way that we've set it up. Okay, so first thing we need to do is apply the scale. So it's not, see how it's not bringing in the scale? Everything's got this like much larger shape to it. It's basically what this is if it was set to 1, 1, 1 in the scale. So we're going to go F3, apply scale. So we want the weird scale numbers that we've got there. We want them to be 1, 1, and 1. So there we go. So now you can see it works. It does change the way things are behaving. So we may need to just go back and tweak that a little bit. So let's just have another look at this guy here. Let's see. I only want to go. Can we just do X? Does that work? I think that is right, actually. Let's just go on the X. So we'll just have it displace along the X coordinate. All right, let's turn the tree back on. Now we need to get the rotation correct because it's, they're wrong. They're pointing out. There's a couple ways we could do that. One, we could go into edit mode and actually change it in the object, but we can also rotate these points. So let's go over here and let's go align rotation vector node. We're going to drop that here and you can see it's going to align everything. It's just happy accident that it's the right one to start with, but that's what we want. Now we can turn this density up and let's just have a look. Is it the same exact shape for each one? It is, I think, the same exact shape. So we would get a little bit of value out of going with collection, I think. So let's try collection, untick hold collection, and select Bark. Now what we can do in here is Shift D, and we can just duplicate a couple of these, right? And the more of these we've got, they're all going to be behaving differently as long as we have to move them pretty far, actually, to get some good variation. But all these barks are going to be different. I can actually untick this group as well to hide them all. Now I can click my tree object again and turn my density up until I've got the coverage that I want. If I turn off this here, the show overlays, it's going to be a little bit clearer for me. So that kind of works. We could go larger with these guys. It's also kind of nice to have some see-through, to be honest, because that's sort of how trees work. Like you get this little like gaps in the bark, which is kind of nice. Let's put a material on this tree object. We'll just select the same one and just place it on there. I think that works pretty well. Okay, I think this is going to suit us for our needs. So that's how we've made some bark. I think it looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and come over here to my render settings. I'm going to turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. So we've got those on. We're also going to go ahead and get an HDRI to set the sort of the environment of our space correctly. So I'm going to go over to my web browser. And I'm going to go to HDRI Haven, which is now called Polyhaven. Give the Polyhaven crowd a shout out. This is an awesome place to go. They are Patreon funded, so go check them out. We're going to go browse HDRs. You can use these for free in your projects. And I want to find, let's go nature. Let's see if we can find like a forest. There we go, forest slope. I think this will do well for us. Oh no, here we go. That's what we want. This one right here looks great. So this is the Lothar waterfall. And I'm going to download this thing at just 1K is fine. That's all I need. So now what I can do is I can bring it in. So I'm going to switch over to my world shader. So go to shader editor and then go to the world shader. The world is what lives in this tab here. And you can just change the color in this space. But we want to actually do something a little bit trickier with it. We're going to go here and go Shift A, and we're going to create an environment texture. There it is. Type in environment texture. And we just open and navigate to the texture file that you've downloaded, the HDRI. All right, now once you've imported your file, what we're going to do is click, take the color, and we're going to stick it right here into the background color. And now you can see we get this nice texture. Maybe that is maybe it is a little too low res. Maybe I should have gone higher than 1K. So those pixels are, let me do that. I'm going to download, I'm going to try, let's go to 4K, open that. Bam, see how sharp that got? It looks nice. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to create a mapping node, and we're going to use that to move this one around. We need to see it goes blank because we don't have the texture coordinate node. You always have to use the texture coordinate node when you're using the mapping node. So texture coordinate node, bam. I'm going to take generated, throw it in there. Now it's back because the default is generated, so you can see it hasn't changed. That's how it looks. Now I can just rotate this around. Not location, I'm going to use rotation. I can rotate it around to find a nice spot for it. Anyways, what's so cool about this is being used now to light our scene. So this is informing the light. Okay, I'm going to take my tree and duplicate it and grab this one down and maybe scale it a little bit, roll it up. Oh, that's kind of cool. Look at that. Look at this nice kind of natural looking break. It looks pretty good. And I think if I create some depth of field now with my camera, it's going to look really nice. So if I come here to my camera and I go ahead and turn on depth of field, you can see it's going to start blurring that. I might turn my f-stop down even further. And I'm going to want to focus kind of right around here is where we're going to go. All right, so the next thing we want to do is start thinking about these mushrooms and how we're going to get them to work and yeah, what they're going to do. So, I mean, it's pretty easy. What you do is you come over here and turn the strength down. And then we go curves. So RGB curves. And we drop it in here to the color and we turn the blue up. So I just push the blue curve up. And what that's going to do is it's going to start to color everything as if it's nighttime. And then I need to take this light, which is in our scene. I can delete that. Now we're purely being lit by this. And then we can go Shift A, create a sun lamp, right? Find a nice kind of angle on this. And then give it a little bit of a blue tint. You can see it starts to look like nighttime. Pop out of my camera, go back to shaded mode. Let me actually think about this. I'm going to go for a mesh. I'm going to go for a UV sphere. And I'm going to grab it up on the Z. I'm going to go into edit mode, go to vertex selection mode, and turn on transparent. And I'm going to look at this thing dead on by using one on my number keypad. And I'm going to go B to box select. I'm going to grab all these and hit X to delete vertices. Okay, so I'm looking at the cap, right? The cap of the mushroom. Okay, I'm going to loop select the bottom. Keep looking at it from the side here. Might hide my cameras so they're not, they're under extras. So I don't have to see that. And with my proportional editing turned on, I'm going to grab Z, roll my mouse wheel to shrink down that circle. And let's do it like this. So we can have like this slight sort of rounded shape to it. Okay. Now, one thing that mushrooms have is this kind of like frill inside, right? So I'm just going to hit A to select all. I'm going to hold on Alt and just, hold down Alt and Shift and click each of these rings. Like so. All right. Now with all those edges selected, what I'm going to do is hit E to extrude. Grab and turn off proportional editing, grab and Z, and I'm going to drag these down. All right. If I turn off X-ray mode, you can kind of see what I'm doing, right? I've just extended these things down. Now I'm going to hit scale Z, and I'm going to drag till they flip. All right. Now they're kind of sticking out the bottom a little bit, which is cool. Now, if I go out of edit mode, you can see I've got this nice kind of cap plus that frilled bit, but it's all quite thin. I'm going to right click and shade smooth. And I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add in a solidify. And bam, we instantly get something that looks a lot like a mushroom. Now we're getting something weird on this edge. What is this one? I think it's because they're connected. So what I should do is separate things, I think. We're going to look at this from the top down view, and I'm going to hit B to box select. And we're going to select that. But the reason I don't have transparent mode on, right? So by doing it like that, it's not going to select anything that's hidden, just all that stuff down there. So I've just selected the cap, basically. Now, what I can do with that is I can go P, which means separate. It's the hotkey for separate. I can separate by selection. It will make this actually a different object, right? So it'll disconnect all those vertexes. Now what I can do is I can select the new object like this. I can go out of edit mode, back into object mode, grab Z, just drag it up a little bit so it's no longer intersecting like that. Then what I can do is actually I can join them back together, and it's not going to have that problem anymore because I've separated those vertexes. So there you go. Now what I can do is I can come down here and let's try adding in a subdivision surface modifier just to round all this stuff out a bit. That looks pretty good. And then what I want to do, I'm going to set it to, I might do it before the solidify. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Now let's add in a displacement modifier to this. So we're going to go for a, where are you? Displace, there it is. And I'm going to click on new to create a new texture. Oh, that's cool. And I'm going to jump down to the texture thing, and we're going to switch this to clouds again. I use clouds pretty much all the time. And I want to make the size really big. I might go bigger than that. Let's go 5, right? So it's a really big size. Then what I'm going to do is come back up to the wrench thing, and I'm going to take the strength down to 0.1. And I'm going to hold down shift and drag up just a little bit to adjust this thing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to select this center vertex right here. Actually, even better, what I could do is select this loop, right? So what I'm going to do is hit C to get brush selection, and I'll just click there, making sure that I've got transparency turned off. So I'm just selecting the top bit. What I could do now is I could just shift D to duplicate and then grab Z just to bring it inside a little bit. I could also scale it down some. Then I get E to extrude, and grab Z and just bring it down like this. Okay. And E, grab Z. I might delete this these faces. So delete those faces. And I'll just go to edge mode and select that edge loop. All right. Now I'm going to look at this from the side. We scale this thing down. Also going to I want to see the effect of all these things when I'm in edit mode. So I'm going to turn them all on. That's what these buttons do, is they make the effect visible when you're in edit mode. This last bit here. And I'm going to get a reference because there's kind of like this like bloom thing that happens, right? Grab this up. I'm going to hit E to extrude and scale and grab it down. Like that, right? And then E, scale it in again, grab it up, E scale, grab it up. Because this is what they do. They kind of like form this frill. We're going to go down and then E. I'm going to hide my trees. So I'm just looking at my mushroom. And then when it gets down to the base, it really starts to flare out again. Mushroom looking thing. Now we also need to make sure that the head here, we need to tilt it because it's not going to be, it's perfectly straight. I'll show you what I did there, by the way. Sorry. If you just hold your mouse over an object, like we know these bits are separated because they're not actually connecting. The vertices aren't connecting. I can hit L while I'm hovering over it, and that will select anything that's connected to this object. And then I can do the same here. So these guys now, I've got them. So I can rotate this. All right, I'm going to scale this guy down, and I'm going to find a position for him on this log. We're going to create a new collection, and we're going to call this mushrooms. And we'll take our mushroom, which I'll rename, and I will drag it into the mushroom collection. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this tree. I'm going to shift D to duplicate it. But on this tree, I'm going to get rid of the geometry node system. So I can just come here to my modifiers and just hit X to delete the modifier off this. I'm going to hide the other trees. I'm going to go into edit mode. And what I want to do is basically just select the faces that I want for where these mushrooms are going to appear. So I'm just going to hold down Alt and select a couple of these. I might hit Control Plus to expand my selection. And yeah, I think that's probably all I want. I don't think I'm going to want any more than that. I might even get rid of some of these over here. So I don't want these things like everywhere in my scene. Yeah, that's pretty good. I'll get rid of these end caps here, and I'll get rid of those bits. Oops. Now what I'll do is I'll go up here and I'll pick select, and I'll click invert, and then X bleed faces. So that's all I've got. Now I can go back into my camera, and with this guy, I'm going to call this mushroom placement. And I'm going to come out of my shader editor. I'm going to go to geometry nodes, click new, and I'll call this mushrooms. And again, I'll go for a point distribute. And I can turn my density up or down. I'm not going to join because I don't want to get that piece of geometry in there. I just use the log so that these are going to like form in the bits that I want. There's other ways of doing it. Like I could use like a vertex group on the log itself and use that to generate it. But you know, it's sort of like whatever comes in your mind when you're making something, you just go with that, and you can refine it as you progress. But as long as it gets the job done, I'm going to go for a point instance, and I'll select a collection, turn off whole collection, and I'll select mushrooms. All right, now we can decide how dense we want these guys. We're also going to go for a random attribute randomize. I'll stick this right here. And the attribute we're going to randomize is the scale. I'll keep it on a float. And a minimum and maximum. I'll take the maximum down a bit and the minimum up a touch, like that. I'm going to shift D to duplicate. We're going to randomize the rotation. Now I wanted this to be a vector because rotation is X, Y, and Z. Scale is X, Y, and Z, but I want X, Y, and Z to be the same because I want it to kind of scale uniformly. But with this rotation, what I want to do is I only want to rotate randomly on the Z, I think. Well, maybe on all of them, actually. So what we just need to do is kind of bring these around. First, we'll find a spot that looks good. So I'm actually going to grab a value node, and I'll plug it into here and type 1. And I'll get another, actually, I'll just use the same one in both. Actually, even better, what I'll do is I'll grab a combine XYZ node, and I'll put this into both the minimum and the maximum. And now I can kind of just rotate this around to find, you know, a good base position that I like. And I can also use this to determine, you know, what's the bit that I'm going to use to create the variation. I think it's going to be the Y. So I'll unplug these and I'll use these numbers. So I'll copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. And then what I'll do is in the max, I'll just increase this one up a little bit. And I might bring this one down a touch. I might just offset these guys a little bit. See, now they're going to be kind of like close to where I want them, which is pretty cool. All right, now I can turn my density up to get even more. I might bring my max scale, bring it down a little bit, I think. Now let's go ahead and turn on our trees. Let's take our mushroom placement, and I'm going to grab Z and bring it up a little bit. Now the reason why they're all kind of appearing down inside is because the origin of our mushroom is up in the neck. So one thing we could do to really help this is if I go into transparent mode on my mushroom and I select, go to edge mode, just select this, alt-click this bottom edge. I can go Shift-S, cursor to selected. That'll put my 3D cursor right in the middle of those points. Now the reason we're seeing all these in edit mode is because they're being instanced through the geometry node system. So that's why we're seeing them all. But what I can do now is go out of this. I can select this, go Object, Set Origin, Origin to 3D Cursor. And that'll put the origin down at the base of the mushroom. And then all these guys are going to work. So now I can actually bring this back down a bit. Now I'm going to play with these rotations a little bit more. Then I've got this thing, right? And I can take this now and I can Shift D to duplicate. And I can, you know, customize, place a couple more of these. That'll give me a bit more freedom. All right, so let's get some cool materials happening on these guys. I'm going to turn on rendered view so we can see our cool little mushrooms in action. And I'm just going to work on one of these guys. I'll just put the same material on both of them. I'll turn off all my selection stuff, and I'm going to switch over to my shader editor. And I'm going to go off of world to object. All right, so I'm going to create a new material, and I'll apply it to both of these guys. So now as we tweak this material, it's going to just work across both of them. All right, so let's see. I'm going to turn up subsurface to begin with, because I know we're going to need that. This is going to allow light to penetrate through these guys. It's going to make them look really nice. I'm also going to affect my camera a little bit, try and get a nicer view. I think I'm going to shoot down the barrel, maybe. Let's do some gradient ramp stuff. So I'm going to get a color ramp, and then I'm going to get a gradient texture and a texture coordinate, and I'm going to use the object coordinate. I'm going to use the factor into the color ramp. I'll plug this into the emission just to start with so we can have a look at it. And then I'm going to grab this and I'm going to turn it into a spherical gradient. And then what I want to do is I'm going to grab a mapping node, drop it here, and then I'm going to move it up on the Z so that it's kind of like up inside the top of the cap. Set this to ease so it's a bit of a softer fall off. So I'm going to take this and I'll go for, let's see, the white, I'm going to go for like kind of a warm color. And the black, I'm going to go for a whitish kind of blue color, I think. Just subtly, like they're kind of shifted off each other. And I'll take this and plug it into the base color. Might see if I pump a little more saturation into this. What does it look like? Okay, we're going to lose a lot of it because of the subsurface scattering. So I might plug this into the subsurface color. And then I'll take it out of the base color. I also might shift it. Actually, I'll create a new color ramp. Drop it here. I'll take the factor into the factor. I'm going to set this to B-spline. And then drag this in. And I'm going to bring this color into the emission. And then I'm going to make this a little bit of a orangey kind of glow color. I'm going to turn the emission strength up so I start to get some bloom. I think what I'll do is I'll create a different gradient texture and I'll plug this factor in. And I'll create a different mapping node. I'll use the object coordinate. Plug this in. This way I've got a little more control over what's going on. And I'm going to take this, I'm going to go value, plug it into the scale. And now I can scale it a little bit. I kind of want to do this so I just sort of like can hint at it, like just get it somewhere so it's not that big. It's just a little ways, position it right over the stem. Down so it's in the stem. That looks really, really, really cool. Let's do the same thing, but with like a noise pattern now. So let's go for a Voronoi. We'll just start with this. I'll Shift D, duplicate this in. I'll take distance, I'll plug it in there. And then I need to create a mix RGB node. And I'll drop it right here and I'll take the color and I'll plug it in. And I'm going to add these together. And I'll turn this one up so I can really see it. Factor down. Now let's take a light in this. Like let's come right in here. Shift A, light, point light. And let's grab it, move it around. I'm going to turn on my controller so I can actually see this thing. Stick it right in here and we'll give it like a blue color. Really saturated blue color. It's just going to help like kind of tie all these things together. Let's go a bit more saturated with this blue as well. That'll help it feel even more like a night scene. I'm going to Shift D to duplicate and behind the mushrooms. There we go. So I can get these little glints. Thanks again for watching. I really appreciate you tuning in and checking out this video. I hope you found it really great. Don't forget to check out the Patreon where you can get this project file along with the full uncut live stream version of this, which ran for about an hour and 40 minutes. We covered a lot of extra details, went down a lot of rabbit holes. It's really worth your time if you want to check that out. You can also find it on YouTube if you become a channel if you become a channel member at the All Access Pass level and higher. Choosing to support me one of those two ways is really awesome. It goes a long way to help me continue to make these tutorials. And what I'll do is I'll edit this and turn it into a 20 to 30 minute long video tutorial that you're probably watching now. And I hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you for checking it out. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, don't forget to subscribe, hit that like button, leave me a comment, and ring the bell for notifications. I'll see you in the next video. Adios. Bye.